So really what we would love to learn is about, well, when you first came here, and there's Riochante. Right now it's called Riochante. Was that one of the first buildings here?
There were several shacks where families lived that were cut by axe or by, whatever, the axes were the tool. But this was a house, a building that was made with real boards. I don't know the history of that, but there was a small sawmill, which I remember they said cut a board, maybe in a half an hour. It took a long time. It was slow. So it was over where the Fabrica now is, cheese plant. The water came from the Guatemala up higher and went across the farm that became Hubert Mendenhall's farm. It belonged to now, of course, names just suddenly that I know very well fall away. Rubén Ugalde. He had the biggest tract where what we bought. But so maybe the boards might have been cut on that.
Was it built before Quakers came, or?
Yes. It was a newer house. I remember seeing the boards, the plain, the color. It had a design over the doorway. They made a little design. How neat to see.
It was like a squatter's house?
Yes, it was names. I can tell you the last name, but I can't think of it right now. They owned the house. But so when people came up here in 1951 and started coming and discovered in last April, so and we decided to name it Monteverde. I remember sitting in the circle down on the farm outside Heredia, where we all gathered together every Sunday, and anyway, in a circle to decide on the name for what we bought, and people that wanted to would suggest names and ahead of time so they knew, so that we came with some names. And there were two names I don't remember. Mildred Mendenhall suggested one. Martin Rockwell suggested the other one. Anyway, by vote, we voted on the name Monteverde. So before people moved up here, we called this Monteverde. It was really Cerro Plano. We were part of Cerro Plano.
Yes. All this part was called Cerro Plano.
Yes.
So this, like the Quaker community was named Monteverde.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so this was Mildred, right? Mildred?
Yes. Mm-hmm. But we didn't, that wasn't important who did it. It was just, she had done the research to see what map there was of Costa Rica, see that there wasn't any other named on the map that was called Monteverde. And so it's all one name. When this was named in Punta Arenas later, they put it as two names.
Yeah.
And most people didn't know that. Anyway, back to the house. So people had lived here, some of the families, not us, because I was expecting my first baby. And people said, no, you can't go up there because it's just an ox cart road. It was too big of a risk. So we stayed down, and Mom went back to the States, where my sister was a nurse and Uncle was an obstetrician. So, and my uncle had a dairy farm, and so Wolf could work on the dairy, and I was under my sister's care and my doctor there. So we came, and my husband had been up here, but I hadn't. We came the very end of November of 1951. Everybody else had already chosen their farms. So the places they chose, I had already been chosen, and it was Arthur and Clara Rockwell that had chosen that particular piece that had a lot of coffee on it. And so it was a...
Was Arthur and Clara one of the elder?
Yes, they were in their 70s.
Oh, wow.
And Elwood Mendenhall was the oldest, and he was 80, probably 81 when they moved up here. I was old. Anyway, so what I was told then, is I wasn't here when it happened, but that the family living there asked if they could stay in the house a little longer because the mother was dying from cancer.
The squatter, the family?
Yeah,
the
yes.
family living there.
And so Arthur and Clara gave them permission. And they put up their tent, which they had. A lot of us had bought tents ahead of time, old army tents. And so they put that up on the other side of the road there by the river. Their daughter, Howard and Dorothy Rockwell, had their farm. So then the family, after the mother had died, they moved out. And Sir Arthur and Clara could have moved in, but we had a newly married couple that got married in August of 1951. And so Lawrence and Betty Osborne, she was Starbuck, and Lawrence was my second cousin. They asked if they could live in the house until they got something built on their farm, which was up at the upper, anyway, up above Howard and Dorothy's farm. And so I'm trying to think who would be, who to say, because it was their farm until they sold it to my Uncle Walter and Aunt Mary.
Walter. Yeah, so up by the reserve.
Yeah. On the way up there. Anyway, so when they got themselves a small one-room house made, because by that time the little sawmill was doing all the work it could to make boards for people to build houses, but most of the houses didn't get built for a few years. And so we lived in the squatters' houses. We called them shacks, but they were really quite adequate houses, very cleverly made with what they could do. And split shingle by axe on the roofs. And anyway, dirt floors. Some of them had some sort of a
So did
floors.
Arthur and Clara finally were able to live in the house?
Yeah, so they did get there then. So by the time we came in November, they were in the house. So I just know the history from hearing others tell it. So you have to question things, go through several people's mouths,
Yes.
see how things get changed. Anyway, but that was the history of that place.
Did it become the first place where Marvin?
Marvin also was their son, their youngest, and he was living with them because he wasn't married then. He was in his 30s, but he was one of the ones that was spent time in prison for not registering for the peacetime draft that the U.S. did. And it's the one thing the U.S. always criticized Germany for having a peacetime draft. But after the Second World War, that's what they did. So that's what, as much as anything, besides just being against war, was the fact that they had a peacetime draft when there wasn't any war. It was before the Korean War. And Marvin didn't register because he had always served in the Second World War. He worked as a medic. And he chose to do that, and he'd seen enough of war to know he didn't want anything to do with it at all. But he had learned skills as a medic that worked to help everybody up here. And it soon became known that he could give medicines and shots, because he could get a hold of different medicines and different things back then. And he had pharmacists in San Jose that helped him get things, because there weren't as many restrictions then.
I was hearing the other day of like even Costa Rican families will bring people so that Marvin had a look at them.
Yeah. And even later, I understand that he taught Clara how to give shots, because lots of times he wasn't there when people came. He even set bones. He did one young little girl in her arm, but he told her that after he had said it, that you'd better get this checked with a doctor to make sure it's right. But years later, this woman, as he was traveling around Costa Rica or selling cheese, she saw him and you're Marvin. And says, you set my arm. And so he found out that she had never had it checked. It was perfect, usable. So he had many experiences. So he eventually, so many people came, his room, he fixed up like a bodega for medicines. So that was the first place that they sold medicines here in Monteverde.
So how did it become property of the Monteverde Institute?
Well, as Arthur and Clara got older, they decided that they needed to live with some of their family instead. And Cecil's by that time had moved to San Jose. So they decided to go and live with them. So their house was for sale, and Dan Boehm from California had read about the place. He was a Quaker, and so he was asked to if he wanted to buy it. So Dan Boehm bought the house. But while it was Arthur and Clara's, it has quite a history too, because so Arthur and Clara were in their 70s, but they had a lot of coffee, and I remember that Clara used to pick coffee.
Really?
On horseback.
Wow. Like she'll pick the coffee on the horseback?
Yes. She and Arthur were both horse people. Arthur loved horses. So they had good horses. Arthur would use his horse to pull logs with her tail. And he'd back up to whatever they needed to do and hold its tail over to the side so it could tie it up. I've seen this, so I know. And then pull the logs out. So that was a working horse. And I used to remember his name because everybody had horses, got horses. That's how we could get around besides walking. If you had the pasture. Anyway, so that was one thing they did. And then, because after 2 years was it? Because in the beginning we had school with 10 students, where the fabrica is. In the house that was I said his name a bit ago. Ruben Ugaldi's,
Yes.
which they'd taken some walls out. And that was where we held our meetings for worship, and where we had school. And Cecil used a little side room, a little area, to Cecil Rockwell, another one of Dorothy's brother. He and Alva set up a pulperia, and Cecil did a little pulperia there where they sold the basics like dulce and locally made dulce and flour and sugar and
Rice? No.
probably rice, but rice wasn't a basic for the newcomers. We learned if you bought rice, it had to be sorted carefully. It would have rocks in it and things. And the beans, particularly, because they'd have the weevils and other trash in with the beans, so you sorted your beans carefully. No packaged foods.
When was the meeting moved from the fabrica to?
So then they had chosen, and when the ones here, we weren't up as part of that, chosen the area in the pieces of land for having the meeting house, schoolhouse, and the cemetery. So it chosen where it was going to be, and the room And the Boehm house that was school had been at least 2 years, no, 2 years and maybe 3 before the building of the schoolhouse, and we used the same building for a meeting house on its property where it is now. And it took time because little by little it was just the men, and they could, working on it and getting the lumber to do it with. And so that when that was open and the school children went to school, and the majority of the students then came from across the river where the Fabrica is and where the present Pulperia is, Casem and all that area. And so Arthur and Claire, Claire, of course, was there too, but they built a stairway that went up behind their house, and quite stairs to go up the bank. It was quite a high bank, so that children going to school, they could cut through their place and go up the stairs. Back up a little bit. Well, I think it was when Lawrence and Betty, because this is all hearsay for me, there was a big boulder that came down and hit the corner of the house. And so, rather than move the boulder, they just made another little room to enclose it at the back of the house. So that was another little piece of history. Nobody was hurt, but it landed in the corner of their house. Anyway, so that stairway was used for many years by all of us. And at someplace, I think I have a picture, but I don't know where, of Clara a picture of Clara on those stairs. But anyway, then later, when Edith Peckham and her sister Nancy came to live in Monteverde, they were also first cousins of many of the Rockwells, and first cousins once removed for everybody. So they built their house they chose to build was there across the river from what we used to call the Boehm house, was Arthur and Clara's house, because they were first cousins of Arthur and Clara. There was lots of visiting going back and forth. There was a little bridge there already that the Costa Ricans had made as they went down, because they used the river water for everything. And as it was clean, clear water. And so there was a little footbridge that they put across the river. Well, you had to go downstairs to get to it, and steps, and up the other side. And they were all a little older, so Arthur designed a swinging bridge to build across the river between their two places, two houses. So it went right from the yard there of where what you call Riochate now, and it was quite an elaborate and very carefully designed bridge, and it was quite a job to span that. And it was Wendy Rockwell's father, David, who was the one that went across. I remember how they did it because I didn't see it being done, but he somehow was the one got across on somehow to get the first cables strung that then laid boards on to start the bridge and then build the structure. So it was quite an elaborate structure. And everybody helped with the building of that bridge. All the men, it is. And a big celebration when it was done. And we could use it, and everybody used that bridge to go across. The other road there by Arthur and Clara's house turned right after the driveway in, turned to go down to the river. And then there was a bridge for people, for horses, for anything, and then later vehicles, or ox carts before that, to cross on that. And had log bases. It was just above the water, and then it went up the steep hill on the other side. And that hill was clay. If you'll ever look at the banks of these roads around here, see where the top is on those banks. That's where the road was, because the roads were all made by hand, no machinery.
Wow.
So therefore you did not dig down to make a road.
Wow.
So that was a very steep hill, which later, sometime, people had hand-carved steps out of that clay hill to go up to what was the meeting house school, and what was the Ugaldi house. So that was there. We kept there for a long time.
Grandma, and can you tell us about like your first relationship with Costa Ricans when you first came?
There was, most of the families, there was I've counted up now, I've forgotten. I think it's 7 families that we bought out when we bought the land. We paid the owners, which is the Guatemala Land Company, that owned that piece of property. They owned that property because they had a gold mine in Guatemala. And so they used the water power to run the machinery in the gold mine down in Guatemala. So they wanted to protect the river. And so that's why they owned all that property. And that's why squatters could come in and live on it, because that was the law, that if nobody was living on the land, you could build your place and develop a farm or whatever. And in 10 years, you could get title to it. So the 7 families that were on that piece of property, we bought out. Some of them moved away, and the one that had owned this property and John Campbell's property had many stills on his land, which we could find the remains of. So we were told by somebody was told that good riddance, they were glad to get rid of him. Anyway, but there were many others that they just found a place someplace else to build so with money they got for buying where they could buy property. So many of them still lived around.
Did you became friends with those
And
families?
became friends with many of those families. So with Rafael Arguedas was one family. And that's various ones. Jovino is the one that has Dos Pinos
Yeah.
there. Anyway, that was part of his father's property. And there was various ones in that family, but a bunch of boys and one girl. And so Rafael Arguedas helped us a lot and helped others with his oxen. And so when we moved to our place, he moved our stuff with his ox cart. And so Rafael Vargas was father of I have to think to get names anymore. Didn't used to have I didn't know. Anyway, of ones that lived close by, and that Cecil bought lands from them and their place. And that's where the hotel there behind it's changed its name now several times. So
Selena, like the other, no, which hotel, Montaña?
no, not the Montaña, but right there behind the Poperia, someone was.
Oh, yeah, El Bosque.
The Bosque.
Yes.
And that was parents'
So there has been,
William Vargas's parents, anyway.
yes, the Vargas family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they have that, still own that family, and that parts of that. So. Anyway, I've forgotten where I was.
Well, we were talking about friendship between.
Oh yeah, they were very good friends. Lots of others too. They were all, so many of them were so helpful. They didn't seem, we didn't have any difficulty at all that way.
I'm always curious about something I admire of like the Quaker practice, or is that valuing that of God and everyone for everything. And the theme for this year with last year and this year with the FWCC, has been love thy neighbor. And so we've been questioning in this time, what does it mean to love thy neighbor? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, ours from the beginning, we were curiosities to all these people. They'd never seen anybody like us. So they'd come, and the women would come and they'd visit, and we'd come in. We couldn't speak the language, but we could smile. So I remember one of my plaques I made on the wall for hang on the wall was, "Smile is a universal language." Anyway, so the people, they would come and visit, and then Nellie always would bring something, like tortillas or something to that's Benny's phone. I have no idea who or what. Anyway, so friendships began that way that lasted for years, the whole life later. And I can remember thinking about, we called her Grandmother Ruth because there was two Ruth Mendenhalls. Ruth Mendenhall, grandmother Ruth, was the wife of Elwood, who was 80. She was a little younger, but not much. And she had Hubert and Mildred's, one of their daughters, was named for her, so there was another Ruth Mendenhall. So, but I remember it being at her house when some of these women would come to visit, and she would just talk to them in English, talk to them so they would understand. Yeah. And of course they didn't understand, and I thought, that's weird. But anyway, weird that she would talk to them.
Yeah, in English.
In English,
but somehow they understand each other.
Yes, they did. So anyway, so that was yes. Now I can't remember names, so I just have to say, yeah, daughter. Her daughter went to our school, and she was one that when she was in high school, and she tried to go to Albany, Ohio, in the States. She was accepted there, but she couldn't get her paperwork to get. Couldn't get permission to go
to the States.
Even though there were people there that would sponsor her and do everything, no. The U.S. didn't let people go if they didn't have enough money, salary, something to prove they had so much money.